Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 33 of the Revive Yourself podcast. Here we go.
Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? Have you got a health issue that just won't go away no matter what you try? Then welcome to the Revive Yourself podcast, where we reveal the secrets to long-lasting health by getting to the root cause of problems that no one else is talking about. So you can have more energy, clear skin, healthier hair, a leaner physique, more confidence, and most importantly, do the things you love and live the life you deserve. Here's your host, Ryan Martin.
So guys, welcome to episode 33. I hope you're well. Hope everyone's been enjoying the show. It's been a lot of fun getting these episodes out to you. Hope you're all well and all learning some stuff. As always, been getting some great feedback, and as I said, been saying before, I keep pointing people in the direction of our website at www.reviveyourself.co for our free 4-day mini course. And any questions that you've got on any of the interviews, etc., then send an email to me at ryan@reviveyourself.co. And you can follow us on Instagram at revive_yourself or on Facebook at /revive natural health. But otherwise, guys, I had some great interviews. People were loving Dean's story, and all the other interviews. We've been getting some really positive feedback. Today's guest is one that I've been wanting to get on for a long time, and it's about the controversial topic of cannabis oil. Now, in my opinion, it shouldn't really be a controversial topic. Cannabis oil is one of the most healing entities on the planet. The hemp plant is just a phenomenal plant that can be used in many different ways to enhance our life. And today's guest is Rick Simpson of Rick Simpson Oil. He's someone who went through his own health crisis like many of our guests, and then he came across the oil and has never looked back since. And he's been all over the world lecturing about the benefits of this, and even through his time trying to get it out to the public, he's faced many challenges. But Rick is someone who, if you've been following the natural health world and come across cannabis oil, you'd have heard his name. He's extremely passionate about getting out the brilliance of these oils, as cannabis extracts, and the healing potential that they hold, and just the miraculous properties that are in these plants, the true healing nature of them. He's so passionate about getting out to everyone. You'll see in this interview with him, because he really doesn't hold back, and he's well, to be honest with you, if I'm being honest, he's got the hump that the government and stuff aren't letting people take this. People can take medicines, for example, that kill hundreds of thousands of people a year, but they're not allowed to take this pure, beautiful, natural plant that has been shown to just stop cancer cells dead. But anyway, I'll let Rick loose, and I'll let you listen to him and what he's got to say on it, and his plentiful knowledge, I should say. So without further ado, here he is. Here's the man Rick, and I'll see you on the other side. Hey guys, and welcome to episode 33 of the Revive Yourself podcast. Today we have a world famous guest talking all about cannabis oil and its benefits, and that is Rick Simpson. How are you today, Rick?
Oh, I'm doing just fine, brother, and I'm happy to be with you.
Awesome. Anyone who's been around the natural health world, looking into different therapeutic supplements, etc., to deal with any sort of chronic illness, you probably would have come across Rick and his work. He's someone who's very passionate about it, and you can find Rick and his work at phoenixtears.ca and www.simpsonramadur.com, and I'll be putting those in the show notes. I first come across you, Rick. It must have been about, it's got to be quite a while now, I think year 5, maybe more than 5 years ago, when I watched Run from the Cure, the film.
Mm-hmm.
Have you, I think a couple of years ago, I heard that you were actually going to do a sequel to that. Has that come out yet? I don't think I've seen it.
No, there was supposed to be a sequel done. I mean, we raised over $20,000 to give to Christian Lorette so he could shoot the second video. But for the last, for over 2 years, I haven't been able to get in touch with him. So really? I don't know what happened, but, over a quarter of that money that he was given actually comes straight out of my pocket. So, I'm as upset about this as everyone else. I would love to have seen that video come out because I'm sure it would have been very important. But so I don't know what's happened here, whether Christian was threatened or, anything is possible. So it's all really the second or the follow up to Run from the Cure. That's all still up in the air yet.
Okay, that was gonna be Run to the Cure, wasn't it? That was gonna be called. I think.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, Run to the Cure. Yes,
rather than Run from the Cure. So, Rick, just for the audience out there, who some of them may, well, I think most of them will probably know of you, but your story was you're a retired power engineer, and in 1997 you got a severe head injury, which led you to using the cannabis extract. So. Just give the Reader's Digest version of how you come about to finding out about cannabis extracts and how you started making your own oil.
Well, I had this severe head injury in 1997, and the doctors put me on all these chemicals and pills and everything they could throw at me, but nothing was helping. And then about a year after my injury, I was watching an episode of The Nature of Things with Dr. David Suzuki. Mm-hmm. And it was called Reefer Madness 2. And it showed all of these patients, smoking cannabis to relieve their medical problems. And it was working miracles. I had smoked cannabis in the past, but I never looked at it like being a medicine. So I went out and got some cannabis. And when I smoked it, it worked better than anything that the doctors were providing. And, in Canada at that time, we had the Medical Marijuana Access Program. And so I asked doctors for prescriptions, for cannabis so I could use it legally. And, of course, all the doctors said the same thing. It's bad for your lungs. It's still under study. What nonsense. A plant that's been used in medicine for 5,000 years is still under study. Yeah. But even the smoking aspect, it did provide me with more relief than what the doctors were giving me. But I needed something stronger because, I have what they call post-concussion syndrome. Right. And I have this ringing in my head 24 hours a day, and it's extremely loud. It drives my blood pressure crazy. And there was other complications, like I had issues with my balance due to the injury and due to the chemicals the doctors were giving me. Yeah. So by 1999, I was getting very desperate. So I went to my doctor's office one day, and I asked him, I said, what would you think if I actually produced the essential oil from that plant and ingested it as opposed to smoking it? And the doctor got a very strange look on his face when I come up with that one. Mm-hmm. But he did admit, he said that this would be a much more medicinal way to use this plant. But they still would not give me a prescription. But at that point, I was getting desperate. So I did produce I went home right after that meeting with the doctor, and I had some cannabis there, so I produced the extract. But, I'm ashamed to say, the reluctance of the doctors, to provide a prescription really made me wonder, if cannabis actually did present a danger. And since I had created a strong concentrate, I knew it would be sedative, but I also thought that it, could do me harm. So, it just more or less sat there for the following almost 3 years. Oh, really? And then in late 2001, I was called into the doctor's office, and they told me that there was nothing more they could do. They had tried everything, so I was now on my own. And again, I asked him, that the doctor knew that the cannabis was the only thing that was giving me any relief, so I asked him for a prescription again. And again, I was refused. So having nowhere else to turn, I went home and I started ingesting these extracts, and the results was just amazing because, the effect of all these chemicals and pills that they had been, feeding me. By late 2001, when I was called to my doctor's office, my thinking abilities were so bad that I could hardly even remember my own name. Really? This is the effect that these medications have. Yeah. And also they tend to make you suicidal. Mm-hmm. But when I got on the cannabis extracts, I started with small doses about an hour before bed. And then within a month, I was up to the point where I was ingesting about a third of a gram at night just before bedtime. And what was happening, it was just amazing. My thinking processes cleared up. My blood pressure come under control. The arthritis I had in my knees, that just disappeared. I started losing, I lost about between 30 and 40 pounds. The weight just started falling off me, and that I found a bit frightening. But the truth was, I was a little bit overweight, And when I got down to the proper weight for my height, I just stopped losing weight. Yeah. And, the improvement was just radical. So many people seeing what these extracts were doing for me. And then about a year afterwards, I had gone in to see the doctor about these three areas, these three lesions I'd had since the 1990s, which wouldn't heal. I had one on the side of my nose, close to my right eye. I had one on my left cheek, and I had one on my chest. And when the doctor looked at it, he said, well, it looks like skin cancer. But he said, we won't know until we receive the results from the pathology report. So I went in. They wanted to operate on that one that was close to my eye first, and they said they'd do the other two areas at a later date. So I went in and had that done, and it was about, 5-6 days later, I was looking at where they had operated, and of course, it was infected. That's pretty standard in hospitals these days. Yep. And it was right at that moment, a report I'd heard almost 30 years before on our local radio station, which had stated that THC, the active ingredient in marijuana, I hate that word. I would prefer if everyone would just call this what it is, the cannabis hemp plant. Yep. But THC from the cannabis hemp plant has been found to kill cancer cells. I heard that report around 1975, but it was presented in a way that, the announcer was laughing about it. Because, when you mention the word marijuana, they always got to make a joke about it. And after that report, I heard nothing more. So I thought it was just, somebody's sick-eyed, sick sense of humor at play. But I'm sitting there and I thought, well, really at that point, I had been ingesting the extract then for about a year. And I thought, well, this can't be true because the extracts that I was producing for myself, they were very high in THC. And, where I had been ingesting this, I thought, well, if that was true, then why hasn't my cancer been cured? But, at that time, I couldn't conceive that the Canadian government would hold a cure for cancer back. To me, that seemed impossible. I mean, surely to God, if there was actually a cure, the medical system would be using it. So, I hate to say it, but I almost didn't try it. Yeah. But just to satisfy my own, the thoughts I was having about it, yeah. I decided, well, why not go down and put a little bit of oil on each of the other two cancers? So I did that, and I put a bandage on them. And the only thing I can say is when you have basal cell carcinoma, it feels like you have splinters in the affected area, like wood splinters. Right. And, it's usually puffed up and bleeding a little bit. And I put this on, but the minute I put that extract on, that splinter feeling went away. But I didn't feel anything else. So for the following 4 days, I just left the bandages in place. And so I went down one day, and when I started to take the bandages off, I was just shocked because both areas had completely healed. And I started telling my friends and neighbors, I said, I think that the extracts from the cannabis plant have actually, cured my cancer. And, of course, everybody laughed at me, yeah, right, Rick, marijuana cures cancer. And, in other words, you're crazy. Yeah. And then about 7 weeks later, where the cancer they had surgically operated on close to my eye, that come roaring right back. So I put a drop of oil on that. I put a bandage on. The same thing. I removed the bandage 4 days later. Now, that was in early 2003. I'd never had to retreat these areas, since that time. And I did go back to my doctor's office for a copy of my pathology report, and it stated right there in black and white that they had excised, or the area they had taken the pathology report from had come back that I had basal cell carcinoma, skin cancer. Mm-hmm. So, there it was right in black and white. So, I told the doctor's secretary that I would like to have a meeting with the doctor to discuss something I'd been working on. And I told her, or she asked me, she said, well, what's this about? And I said, well, that cancer they operated on, it came right back. So I treated it and the other two areas with hemp oil. And the minute I said hemp oil, the woman just went rigid. I was standing in a waiting room with 5 or 6 patients there. It was just a small waiting room. And this woman was literally screaming at me. The doctor will not go there. The doctor will not prescribe this. And it was like being in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, it's baffling, isn't it?
Yeah, so I got in my vehicle and I was driving home, and I got thinking, if I was a small town doctor and one of my patients had cured their cancer with a natural plant extract, I think I'd want to know about it.
Yeah.
So that's, after that, I started supplying it to other people, at first for skin conditions. And then since I'd been taking it myself and I knew that these extracts were non-addictive and totally harmless, I started supplying it to people who had internal cancers, serious conditions like lung cancer and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. And the results were just astounding. It was healing people left and right. And it wasn't just cancer, it was working on everything. So I went to every political party in Canada. I went to 2 federal ministers of health, Anne McClellan and Yolande Dosage. I went to Dr. David Suzuki with The Nature of Things. I went to the Canadian Cancer Society, and we even took this to the United Nations. Nobody would lift a finger. And that's when I started realizing just how corrupted our world really is. What's going on here. Really, what's going on or gone on since they outlawed the cannabis plant or the medicinal use of it? This is the greatest genocide that's ever been committed in human history, because this is really the most effective medicine on this planet for basically every condition known to man. I've never seen anything like this substance. It's literally a cure-all. But again, it's a plant. They can't, they couldn't patent it. So the big money behind the pharmaceutical industry and many other industries. See, cannabis was a threat to many of these large industries. So they went in and they corrupted the governments into outlawing the cannabis plant. They gave it a new name, marijuana. And then they come out with all this nonsense, reefer madness and those stupid movies out of Hollywood. This is truly a horror story. And if the public actually knew, if they would just wake up and realize what's been done to them, the number of people that suffered and died since that time who could have been saved. And, we're talking hundreds of millions, if not billions of people. Yeah, because this has been going on for decades, for God's sakes. Yeah, Rick, and it's still going on to this very day.
Yeah, I was just going to say that you touched on so many points there. It's hard to talk about these things and people say, oh, conspiracy theories. It's like, well, it's not. Look at the facts. The facts are, when you took that, you mentioned base cell carcinoma, and you said the weight started to fall off you. Was using the extracts the only thing you changed, or did you change your diet and everything else as well?
No, all I used was just the extracts. Actually, the extracts really do change your diet, whether you like it or not. Mm-hmm. What I found is that all of a sudden I started eating only about 1/3 the amount that I used to eat.
Right.
And the truth is, from the time we're children, we're trained, eat your breakfast, eat your dinner, eat your supper, mm-hmm. And we put all this food into us, and in many cases we don't need it.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. No, sorry, wait, carry on.
Oh, no, that's what happened to me, and I'm certainly grateful it did, because, without the use of these extracts, I'm sure I would have been dead many years ago. This extract saved my life, and now it's saved the lives and eased the suffering of millions of people worldwide. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there who are using my name to sell their extracts. They're all making what they call the RSO. And I have nothing to do with any of these people. There's even medical foundations that are using my name to gather money. Mm-hmm. And again, I have nothing to do with these people. It just shows you what a sick world we live in. And in a way, I hate to go after these scam artists, because there are some people out there that do produce high-quality extracts, and they are truly trying to help the sick and suffering. But for every one of those you find 10 people who are out there selling low-quality extracts at very high prices, and they are literally scamming the public out of their money, because most of these extracts have little or no healing value. Yeah. So it's truly a distressing situation.
Well, this is one of the things that actually when I was talking to I think it's your wife when we tried to set up the interview, you're saying just make sure. I said like not going to advertise any other oils, and I said no, of course not. But the only place that you can find Rick and his work are at the places we mentioned before, and that's at phoenixtears.ca and www.simpson@ramdur.com. And I wanted to make that very clear to people, because Rick it's because you've changed the game, Rick. When you come out and you've done this and you spoke about it, people know, and now it's got to the point where there's you're seeing people with seizures, even on social media, people we've got seizures and they're taking drops of THC oil or CBD oil, and the seizures just going. Like you just see it before their eyes. It's got to the point where they can't even ignore this anymore. It's become more mainstream at how good it is. But people are still, like you are, people are still scared of taking it in case something goes wrong, but they're not scared of taking chemotherapy or radiation. Chemotherapy, which has got a 97% death rate, and this is the problem, that people have been so brainwashed. I want to go into that in a little bit, but this is what people were talking about. I mean, Rick's saying there about how it's genocide and how it's how corrupt things are. I mean, you've been raided. I think the last time I was doing my research, you've been raided 4 times, is it? And I think the last time was in 2009 by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They raided your home. Just go through what they were looking for. What was that like? I mean, I can imagine that was quite an ordeal.
Well, I mean, see, I was very open about what I was doing. I mean, like I said, I contacted all the right people. I was giving the extract away. And I went to the police myself, and I gave them videotapes of meetings we had with patients and everything. And I also told them that local politicians should be charged with criminal negligence causing death because they're not representing their people. Mm-hmm. And I told the RCMP openly that I was growing it in my backyard. I made no secret of it. And I asked them for everything, any of the high quality bud that they confiscated. I asked them if they would give it to me so I could produce more medicine for the people. But then 3 months later, well, that was in 2005, 3 months later, that same detachment came and raided me. Mm-hmm. I couldn't believe it, because, I just wanted the public to understand and know, about this so that, it would give a solution to so many people, that were dying.
Yeah, you just wanted to get the word out, right?
Well, I tried to do it through the government, but of course, what they do, they sent the police to persecute me, the legal system. And so in 2004, I put up the website. This was a year before I was ever charged. I put up the website, phoenixtears.ca, and on that website, we told the public, how to produce their own medicines. And I also went to the local newspaper, again, a year before I was ever charged. They did full-page articles about me. Picture of me and everything, describing everything I was doing. Now, would a criminal do that? No. What went on in Canada, this whole court, I seen for myself how corrupted the legal system truly is. Mm-hmm. You see, the truth is, these people, it's the rich elite that are running this planet. It's not our damn governments. These mega rich psychopaths, like the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, groups like that. And they're controlling our governments. The governments, in turn, control the educational system. They control the legal system, the medical system. And everybody's dancing to their damn tune. But, it's totally ridiculous because this allopathic approach to medicine, which was given to us by the Rockefellers back in the early 1900s, they started the medical foundations. And then they took over the medical schools. And, you see, Mr. Rockefeller and his rich friends, well, many of them own these factories, and they're producing all these toxins that are left over, and they can't get rid of them. Mm-hmm. Well, what a wonderful thing if they could convince the public that these are actually medicine, and feed it to the people. What a great way to turn a profit and get rid of these toxic substances. And this is exactly what they did. They taught all the doctors the allopathic approach to healing, and they put out the old empirical medicine, the medicine from plants. They shoved that right out the back door. And, who on God's green earth, when you look at the history of this plant's use in medicine, it's legendary. It was a well-known fact that cannabis was the most medicinal plant on earth. Yep. So who has the right to outlaw this plant's medicinal use? No one ever had that right. And it says right in the Christian Bible that we, as human beings, we all have the right to use these plants to our best advantage. So, what's going on today is nothing more than madness that was provided to us by the Rockefellers. And I think it's high time things change because these treatments like, chemotherapy, radiation, cancer-causing treatments to treat cancer. Mm-hmm. The minute you take chemo or radiation, well, guess what? Now you've got no immune system. Your hair falls out. How could anybody in their right mind look at a patient and say this is good for them? You got somebody suffering and dying from cancer, and now you're going to poison them? If this is not insanity, I don't know what you could call it. And today, it's a well-known fact that I believe it's over 90% now of oncologists, the cancer doctors themselves, if they had cancer, they will not take their own treatments.
They won't take it, yeah.
They get a big kickback off every, sale of chemo that they make. This is not medicine.
Well, in America, I mean, I know a lot of doctors have actually been sued now, or people gone to prison for giving out chemotherapy when patient didn't need it, because it means that they earn so much more money. And I even heard you say before, and I listened to a couple of interviews, you said doctors, if as you said, 90% of them wouldn't take their own chemotherapy, but you'd 100% take 60 grams of cannabis oil. That's the difference.
Well, I mean, if doctors would simply follow their own Hippocratic oath, because that is the basis of medicine. And right in that oath, it says, first do no harm, and it also states, as a physician, I shall not administer poison. So what are these people doing today? The only side of medicine that I put any trust in is the surgical side.
Yeah.
As far as the pill pushers, the oncologists, and the psychiatrists go, that is nothing but a fraud. I mean, when you look at psychiatry, there is no medical science even behind that branch of medicine.
Not one scrap of evidence, is there, between mental health? No, I know, yeah. I mean, this is... Right, there's so many different points we want to get to there, because, first of all...
Are we still online?
Yeah, got you.
Okay.
First of all, so, this is the thing. People don't realise, as you've mentioned there about Rockefellers and stuff, there's a thing called the 1939 Cancer Act. People don't realise this, and by law they've made it illegal for you to treat cancer with anything but surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy. Now you've got something like cannabis oil that's never killed anyone, is hugely treats cancer. It's known to kill cancer cells dead. It's phenomenal. Never killed anyone. And you've got things even like aspirin that are killing hundreds of thousands a year, and they're on every other medical drug, but they're not letting cannabis oil out there for public consumption. And to me, as you say, it just doesn't. It baffles belief. It is. You can only look at that one way, right? They're just trying to stop things going because it's their bottom line. It's a $1 trillion industry, or even pounds. I mean, I know this has affected you so much now that you've had to travel around. You're in Croatia, right? Because if you stay around, they try and track you down.
Oh no, I mean everybody knows where I'm at. I go out and I do lectures. I've done many lectures here in Europe with some of the top experts in the world.
Yep.
I'm not hiding out from anyone.
No, but I think you said it's not hiding. It's I can't remember what you said. I think it was 2009. I think you said it was just becoming a pain in the bum to just deal with the Canadian police. Was that correct, or have I got that wrong?
Well, and see, the last raid they performed was when I was at the Cannabis Cup doing a lecture in 2009. Right. And they made me Freedom Fighter of the Year in 2009 too. But it was just a couple days, or I think the day before they made me Freedom Fighter. That's when I heard that my son called me and told me that the house had been raided again. And I couldn't believe it, but you see what was happening. I was becoming such a thorn in the Canadian government's backside. I think what they thought, it was no secret that I was going to be in Amsterdam, and so it was about a week after I left for Amsterdam. That's when they performed the raid. And, they went in there, the RCMP went in there to frame me, is what they did. They said they found restricted weapons. Well, the only thing that was in my house when I left Canada was a child's pellet gun. Any 10-year-old can buy one. They're not illegal. And they said that they found booby traps, and the RCMP were afraid for their lives. What had happened the day I was leaving for Amsterdam, there was a couple small bags of garbage on my deck. And when my son came back from dropping me off at the airport, the landfill was closed. So he took a couple boards and he drove nails in them, sticking up, and he put them around the garbage bags to keep the bears out of it. Right. So these were the booby traps. Right. And then these idiots for the RCMP, they went into my backyard, they dug up 70 pounds of compost. Because see, when I was done producing the extracts, I always threw the plant material, as away as compost. I used to throw it on the hillside into my backyard. And so they went out and they dug this up, and this was their evidence. What a sick joke. So, I knew that they were just, trying to frame me, and I think they thought that, if we can keep them out of Canada, we can starve them out. And they damn near did. I have to admit that, because I was living for the following 3 years in Europe on practically nothing. Mm-hmm. But I kept giving lectures. I kept going from different countries whenever I could. And I always exposed the truth. Mm-hmm. And now I've gone all over Europe. Now the whole world knows the truth about what the Canadian government did. But it's not just the Canadian government here. Yes, they're definitely holding the truth back, and they're trying to control this, and they have no right to do that. These laws need to be repealed. But you have to look at what the American government did.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, when Richard Nixon became president, he wanted to get to the bottom of this cannabis issue, so he formed the Schaefer Commission. Well, the Schaefer Commission came back and told Nixon to legalize this plant. And they also told him that they didn't even consider it to be a narcotic. So what does Nixon do? He turns around, he starts the war on drugs, and then, you know, what drug do they, or no, I hate to call this a drug, it's really a medicine. But what did they focus on? Cannabis. You know, and then after the Medical School of Virginia study, the one I was referring to earlier, the Medical School of Virginia study was designed to prove that cannabis caused cancer. But what it did, it proved just the opposite. Yeah. It proved that these cannabinoids like THC were actually killing cancer. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, Gerald Ford, well, Nixon had been impeached, so Gerald Ford had taken over. They went around, they shut that study down, and then they went around and they confiscated as much of the medical research as they could from all the universities in the U.S., and then the wonderful Gerald Ford passed it all right back to the pharmaceutical industry. You know, the thing was the pharmaceutical industry felt that they needed to take the high out of this medication. Now, I mean, these are the same monkeys that supply us with OxyContin and Percocets and all these other horrible addictive substances that, you know, they'll get you as high as a kite. You know, yeah. So, but they're not worried about the high that creates. No. And anybody, as far as getting high from cannabis, that's harmless. Mm-hmm. Nobody in history has ever died from cannabis. No. You know, there's no rational reason behind this. Today they even say, you know, well, we need to do human trials, you know, and all of this nonsense before it could be made available to the public.
Well, you're a human trial. You're a human trial. You know?
Yes. Yeah. Well, all of these people up on the internet, I mean, there's hundreds of them up there that, you know, provided video testimonials about, you know, what the wonderful effects these extracts have had in their medical problems. Mm-hmm. But human trials were actually conducted back in the 1840s in England. Mm-hmm. That's when Dr. O'Shaughnessy returned after 9 years in India, and he introduced cannabis cannabis medicine to all the doctors in England. And they were producing the extracts and infusions, and they were having wonderful results. So that, you know, it was no secret. And even back at that time, they'd already found that if you have the proper cannabis strains, the extracts have far superior pain-killing abilities than even the strongest opiates.
So this was in 1840? You know?
In the 1840s.
Right.
That's when human trials were conducted. So there is no logical reason that this is going on today.
So it's just. I think I've heard you mention. Yeah, I've heard you mention as well. You said in 1954 the United Nations then made a statement that it's not a medicinal. If I can speak, not a medicinal plant. Is that correct?
Well, that was Harry Anslinger.
Right.
I mean, he was the head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics.
So 100 years later, they said it's not, but 100 before they proved that it was a healing plant.
Well, it's always been known. I mean, if you go back in the ancient Persian religious texts, 800 years before Christ, the Vedas, and these Vedas, they listed the most medicinal plants known to man. The number one plant on that list was the cannabis hemp plant. Mm-hmm. You know, it's no damn secret. The greatest healers in history used this plant. Yep. And I mean, even Jesus himself. You know, they always say, well, Jesus used the power of God. I think it had all of these miracles that Jesus was supposed to have worked. I think it had a great deal more to do with the healing power of cannabis, because the holy anointing oil, one of the major ingredients, was a substance they called cannablossom. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what they called cannabis bud 2,000 years ago. Yeah. So the holy anointing oil was full of the same cannabinoids that, you know, that the extracts I produced, you know, contained. So, I mean, 200 years after Christ, the Chinese were using a mixture of these cannabis resins and wine as an anesthetic. And they were doing painless operations and amputations. You know, and even up into the 11th, 12th centuries, there's reports of how effective that cannabis was in the treatment of tumors. Mm-hmm. You know, all of this has been hidden. And this is so disgusting. You know, that people, these rich psychopaths, I mean, it's just all about greed and power, and they don't care who they have to kill to get what they want. Yep. And unfortunately, these are the same people that are controlling our planet As a matter of fact, that one family, the Rothschilds alone, they say that one family has enough money to feed, house, and clothe every human being on this planet.
Yeah.
Now, should any one family have that kind of power?
No.
This is ridiculous.
I remember seeing something once, Rick, where it was a female. I can't remember what she was. She's in the natural health world, and she did a report into to a lot of how money's spent, etc. And she said in America, she said to feed, clothe, sanitize, give heating to every single person in the world, it would cost something like $26 billion or something like that. I can't remember what it was. And she said in 1 year, America spends $52 billion on ice cream. 26 billion. So you spend double the amount on ice cream than they would do to house, clothe, and sanitize everyone in the world. This is what they talk about with the money. And talking about hemp and how healing it is. I mean, I've seen people using hemp for instead of concrete, hempcrete, and using hemp to make cars. I think Henry Ford was the one, 1941. He even took a sledgehammer to it. He couldn't even. It was like lighter than steel, and stronger, and you can use it as a fuel. I mean, it can be used for so many different things. It is actually just, you say, it just becomes a point where when is your brain kicking and you think there's a reason why they're hiding this from us.
Well, I mean, today, over 60,000 different things. Practically everything we use in our day-to-day lives can be produced from cannabis. Mm-hmm. So why aren't we doing this? We could put people back on the land. We could put an end to unemployment. We could put an end to starvation. We can supply our own energy needs. It's a solution to so many of our problems that we're currently facing. It's a rational solution. Even when you come to the fuels, when you look at cannabis, when cannabis is growing, it takes in CO2 and it gives off fresh air. At the end of the cycle, after you've taken the seeds, the medicine, and whatever else from the plant, you can then take what's left over and turn it into a fuel. And when that fuel is burned, it just releases the same amount of CO2 that it took in while it was growing. No increase in CO2 levels. The only reason we have this is because we're burning these damn fossil fuels that have been buried in the earth for hundreds of thousands or if not millions of years, and they're full of CO2. So why are we doing this? This is truly madness. And when you look at, the Gulf oil spill, Fukushima, and all of these poison industries, today we're living in a toxic world and it's becoming more poisoned every day. This is compromising our immune systems, and this is why we're seeing this horrible increase in cancer rates and all of these other diseases. And I mean, it seems like they come up with a new one every week. And but this is a rational solution to all of these problems. Yep. And it's also a solution to this drug-addicted society that we're living in. I mean, people everywhere, they're all popping these pharmaceutical medications, and actually they're high on the damn things. And a lot of people don't even realize it. And, they become addicted to it, especially these soldiers that come back with PTSD. I mean, the first thing they do is throw them on the opiates, and then they turn them into drug addicts. But, I mean, the rational solution here is to give the soldiers cannabis extracts. It helps them deal with what happened. Yeah. And I've had so many, positive reports from soldiers that have used this. So, but they're holding all of this back because, unfortunately, it's like I said, our governments are all in the back pocket of big money. It doesn't make any difference what political party you vote for. These parties are all bought and paid for. So no matter who gets elected, you still get the same nonsense. I mean, how many times have you seen an election where they kept their promises? That don't happen. They'll tell you anything. They'll tell you anything to get elected. But once they go in there, they go right back to work for the big money. Well, they don't give a damn about their citizens.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember who it was. Said if voting made a difference, they wouldn't let you do it. Or it's like left and the right wing are parts of the same bird. It's all just much for a muchness. I mean, and as you say, you're extremely passionate about this, and so that's why I do this show, because I want to get this information out to people so they understand that they are as much as the government wants to do anything, you can go out and you can you can blaze your own path. So yeah, I remember you were telling people, I want to get into your oil and THC and CBD and what's different there, but just quickly, there was a story I heard you tell about a lady who was suffering really badly from Crohn's disease, and her son got up in school when they were saying about how cannabis oil was bad, etc. Her son got up in school and said, well, no, I know it's different. I know this is a healing plant. And didn't the government sue her or put her in prison for that? I can't remember what it was.
Well, you're talking about Shona Banda.
Yeah.
This is a woman from Kansas, and she was on her deathbed. She was dying from Crohn's, and she heard about the extracts, or about how to produce them, and so anyway, she got her hands on a little bit of this extract, and it started bringing her back. And in a very short time, she was back on her feet again and in a fairly healthy condition. And she's been a great little activist, for cannabis. But that's what happened. Her son, this was 2 or 3 years after she was healed, her son went into school one day, and they were trying to preach all of this nonsense, how harmful cannabis was. And the child just disagreed, and he told them the truth. And then the next thing you know, they come out, they take her children away. And then she's charged. I mean, what a rigmarole this poor woman had to go through. But they didn't put her in jail, as I understand it. Recently, she was supposed to go to court in Kansas, and I wish she had it, because she had so much support behind her. But, they had badgered her so badly. I think that they just put so much pressure on her that she accepted some kind of deal. And I haven't heard exactly what took place, so I can't relay that information, but what a shame that they do this to people. Somebody dying and they save their own life by using a plant extract, and that's a big, bad crime. I don't know where these authorities in cannabis have been living. I mean, half the U.S. now, or over half, have legalized the medicinal use of this plant. They're not doing this for no damn good reason. And the same thing is happening worldwide. You're seeing all of these countries, Canada, Australia, Romania, Czech Republic, all of these different countries. Everywhere. They're legalizing this. But they're still trying to see the governments. They're legalizing the medicinal use of cannabis, but they're not saying why. And the governments are still trying to promote the use of these synthetic cannabinoids like Dronabinol and Marinol. Synthetic cannabinoids produced by the pharmaceutical industry, because you see, they can patent them. Why do we need synthetic cannabinoids? And actually, these cannabinoids have proven to be harmful in many, many situations. And I've even heard that people have died from them. Now, nobody dies from the natural cannabinoids on the plant itself. So why do we need this nonsense? It's all about, the patents. The pharmaceutical industry is corrupted to the core, and I've openly stated that I firmly believe that the pharmaceutical industry has known how to cure cancer for at least 150 years. Yeah. Because back in the 1800s, they were all producing cannabis-based extracts, because it was a major ingredient in most of the damn medications that companies like Parker Davis, Squibb, Eli Lilly, major ingredient in practically everything they were selling. As a matter of fact, in the 1880s, Eli Lilly was selling painkillers, hashish, painkillers. And I'm sure they worked, but they always controlled the potency. And see, around the 1880s, 1890s, that's when they started mixing. Well, if I take one chemical and I mix it with another, I can patent that. And this is what Rockefeller and his rich friends, that's what they pushed. Yeah. What a horror story.
I mean, even it's the same with vitamin C. Back in the 1940s, I think it was, Dr. Klenner used vitamin C to cure 60 out of 60 cases of polio. When the vaccine didn't even exist, and they got vaccines now for this sort of stuff, and it goes deep. It goes into every single aspect of it, which is a nightmare. I know exactly where you're coming from, Rick. So just to, because people will be like, well, there's lots of different, cannabinoids or strains of the plant. What makes the way you made your, or the Rick Simpson oil, what makes it different from other strains or oils you can buy on the market? And also, what's the difference between THC and CBD oil?
Well, both THC and CBD are just cannabinoids. I mean, a friend of mine, Dr. Lemire Hanoush, who's one of the top experts in this field, he recently isolated 144 different cannabinoids that this plant contains. And, I mean, all the research that's been done over the years, it was all done on THC. And it's a well-known fact. I mean, back in, 2007, Harvard University started agreeing with me. And then in 2009, the American Cancer Institute itself started singing a different song about these cannabinoids. And as a matter of fact, right on their own web pages, they openly admit that THC is very effective in the treatment of several different forms of cancer. This, but the CBD, it does have benefits. I mean, there's no question that CBD can reduce, like people with epilepsy, it can reduce the number of seizures they're having. Right. But in so many of these cases I've seen, they would reduce the number of seizures, but they still, even when they were still taking the extract, they were still having a certain number of seizures. Right. And I've always said, put some THC in the extract, and then when they do that, no more seizures. They completely disappear. It's like Dr. Raphael Michelin. He was the guy that discovered THC. Mm-hmm. And Michelin always said, it's what he called it, the entourage effect. The different, all these different cannabinoids working together that produce these wonderful healing qualities. Mm-hmm. But you see, the extracts that I produced, they were all very high in THC content, up and around 85, 90%, sometimes even higher. Right. They also contain CBD, sometimes 2, 4, maybe 6%.
So Rick, just quickly, the CBD, the THC, is that what makes people get high, maybe a little bit hallucinative?
Yes, it's the active ingredient, yeah. But just the listeners out there, just so they can put a finger on what we're talking about. So that when you got high levels of THC, that's what gives you the high. That gives you the high, really. Well, I've always, told people to use the strong sedative indica strains that have a THC content of 20% or more. Okay. Because the sedative indica strains, they produce, these sleepy effects. Mm-hmm. And sleep and rest are part of the healing process. Yep. And they work miracles. I do have fears to some degree about the use of sativas, because sativas, again, it's just another branch of the cannabis plant. But sativas can be very energizing, especially if you produce an extract from them. Okay. And to put it, I don't want to see terminal cancer patients bouncing off the walls, because that's what some of these sativa extracts can do.
You want to give them rest, right? You want to be able to rest in.
Well, it interferes with their sleeping patterns. Mm-hmm. And I honestly think that if you gave like a strong sativa extract to somebody, say, who had a heart condition, there is a possibility that you might kill them. But when you take the extracts made from the strong sedative indica strains, well, what I always found, the patient would take their dose, usually within 45 minutes to 50 minutes. They would sit there and get the smile on their face, and then 5 minutes later, they'd be sleeping. It just knocked them out. Yeah. But it was working miracles. And when in the same thing today, they're out there today, we can't have people driving high. Well, what kind of nonsense is this? I mean, I always told the patients, when you start taking this medication, for the first 3 weeks, basically all you're going to do is sleep. And I always advise them not to drive their cars during that period. Mm-hmm. But once they get the feel of this medication, they can safely drive their cars, because it does not impair your motor skills. It's not like pharmaceuticals or alcohol. Your motor skills are not impaired. And believe me, I drove under the influence of cannabis myself tens of thousands of miles. The only thing I ever noticed was that I drove more carefully if I was on cannabis. Mm-hmm. And I think this is something we could use on our highways. And as a matter of fact, in the U.S., in these states that have legalized, I understand that our accident rates have dropped 9 or 10%. And I think that cannabis is responsible for that.
That's an interesting theory. I can imagine, I can get what you're saying. If it will slow you down, probably make you more relaxed rather than being stressed, so you're not on edge, not road rage incidents, people trying to get everywhere too quick. So yeah, I can probably believe that. When you I think you said as well, I know you went to court, and so we can touch on a bit, but you said you could make about $100 worth, 60 grams for $100 worth for a cancer cure, right? You said,
well, yes,
which that's pretty cheap, So when people are, it is very cheap, You're talking about curing cancer or treating cancer, I should say. So once again, we're not medical doctors, so we can't say that, but whatever. So if people wanted to take THC or Rick Simpson oil, or make it themselves, they can find it, but. What would you prescribe them to take? How many grams over how many days, and sort of how many drops are in how many grams? Yeah, how many drops make a gram? What would you go about that, or how would you go about that?
Well, it takes about around 26 or 27 drops of this extract from an eyedropper when the extract is warm, because then it'll still run.
27 drops.
26, 27 drops. That's about a gram.
Right.
And a gram and a milliliter are just about the same.
Right.
Almost the same in weight. So, what I suggest that people do, as a matter of fact, it's not just cancer patients. We live in a toxic world, and our bodies are full of toxins and heavy metals.
Hugely toxic world.
Yeah, and if you take if you take a full 60-gram treatment, just as if you were suffering from cancer, it will detoxify your body, and it rejuvenates vital organs. It works in so many wonderful ways to help, maintain our health.
So you take 27 drops of that every night for 60 days, or would you do
No. I start people off with little tiny doses, just a little tiny speck that you can hardly see.
Just one drop, yeah?
Not even, it would be like a quarter of a drop. Just a little tiny speck.
Right.
And then you take it early in the morning, mid-afternoon, and about an hour before bed.
And how they do it? Under their tongue?
No, you just take this and swallow it. That under the tongue, to me, that's just a bunch of nonsense.
Okay.
More propaganda.
Okay.
But what I found, after 4 days, the average person could then double their dosage.
Right.
They go another 4 days, and then they double again. And in a short time, they become accustomed to the effects of the extract they're using, and you no longer get high from it.
Right.
I mean, I had many terminal cancer patients, after a month, they would go back to work, and they were still continuing to take this extract, because at that point, they had got themselves up to the point where they could ingest a third of a gram every 8 hours. So 1 gram every 24 hours. They would go back to work, and the people they were working with didn't even know they were taking it.
Yeah. I suppose as your body gets used to it, and therefore you understand how you're going to feel in it. Same as everything else, right? Your body adapts, and you get to understand it. Okay, so you say 60 grams over 90 days. That's a good place to start.
Well, most of the patients that I treated, if you've had no chemo, no radiation, 60 grams over 90 days usually cured their cancers, and I'm talking about a success rate that's over 90%.
Right.
And even those who have been badly damaged by from the medical system with their chemo and radiation, about 80% of these people can be saved too. Yeah. But the only thing is, they have to ingest about 180 grams of that extract, 3 times as much, over the next 5 or 6 months, to undo all of that damage that the chemo and radiation had left behind, because the effects of these horrible treatments linger in your body for years. And if you don't take that extra, the extra oil to undo that damage, that brings the cancer back, because these are carcinogenic treatments.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I always say to people, cancer is not a death sentence. It's your body crying out for help, and when you're doing that, you're just taking away. They're immunosuppressants, as you said, radiation, chemotherapy. This mustard gas. I just don't understand it myself. But okay, so because a lot of people are saying, oh, you can take this along with the chemotherapy because it helps. It helps like the pain effects. Like, well, how about you just take it without the chemotherapy and see the power that it has then? But that would be my if it was me and I got ill like that, that's what I would do. I'm pretty sure you'd do the same. If people wanted to I mean, I don't know if say grow themselves or anything like that, is there certain seeds or etc. that you'd point them in the right direction, or how would they go about that? How many plants would they need to grow?
Well, it depends on the strain. How good you are at growing. I mean, the seeds are readily available. There's all kinds of seed companies out there that provide the cannabis seeds, and you can order them. And if people would simply go out and grow their own, which is what, I've always promoted. I've always said, I've always told people, go out and get a good book, like the Indoor-Outdoor Medicinal Growers Bible, written by Jorge Cervantes. Mm-hmm. If you have a book like that, it'll tell you everything you need to know about growing. And there's a great number of other books out there by Ed Rosenthal and many other people, who are very knowledgeable about this subject. So I would always say, get a good book on the subject and educate yourself. But I mean, cannabis is more or less recognized to be a weed, and a lot of these strains are very hardy, so they're very easy to grow. But I mean, an experienced grower could take one plant and maybe grow a kilo or even more, a bud on it. Well, a kilo of good bud will produce 2.5 to 3 cancer treatments just from 1 kilo. I mean, 180 grams and 200 grams of oil. So this is what I encourage people to do.
Your books, will they teach people how to do that?
Oh, yes, and right on the website, all the information that anyone needs, to produce these extracts properly, it's all right there on the Phoenix Tears website. It's been there since 2004. The dosage instructions, everything is available there. Mm-hmm. But the trouble is today, people don't read. Yeah. They go to the website and then they get my email address, and I mean, we're swamped with emails. And then they send me all these ridiculous questions that have already been answered, and there's only so many hours in the day, brother, and there's just me and my wife, and believe me, I mean, we're stressed to the limit just trying to keep up with things.
I can imagine. So I try and get, if I can, something down the line, maybe get an affiliate going so people who land on my site can go and see yours, because I know this is why I want to get people like yourself on, Rick, because you're doing so much, you give so much information out for free, it's all been for free, and you've been helping people for years now, and people need to find you and need to find your work. But once again, you say, I mean, you're not responsible for them, right? They've still got to do their own reading and sort of understand where you're coming from. But as you said before, quote unquote, we all have the right to heal ourselves, and this is something that as humans we should be able to look into and to take and to try on ourselves, because I know the government doesn't really want us to do that, even over here, same as in Europe and America and etc. But it's really up to us to do.
Well, Ryan, I mean, the biggest drug dealers on the planet are the governments themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the U.S. Wasn't it the Central Intelligence Agency that flew all of those plane loads of cocaine from Central and South America into the U.S. and got everybody addicted? And look at,
Can't say that, Rick.
What?
I'm saying you can't say that because I'm joking. Yeah.
It's the truth, brother.
Yeah, I know,
and the same thing when you look at Afghanistan. When the Taliban was in charge up there, they tore out the opium poppy and they planted cannabis. Mm-hmm. But when our brave soldiers arrived, they go in there, they rip up all the cannabis and replant the opium poppy plant. And we have soldiers up there guarding poppy fields, for God's sakes. Mm-hmm. And a very high percentage of the world's heroin supply originates in Afghanistan. So what are our troops doing, guarding these fields? It doesn't even make sense. No. And these same governments will take us into court and put us in jail for growing a God-given, harmless, non-addictive plant like cannabis to heal ourselves. This is the insanity of the world we live in. And it's high time that people stand up for your own rights, unite, and demand your rights. I mean, this happened. I seen this happen in Santiago, Chile. I was there in 2014 speaking at Expo Weed. And just a few months before I got there, they had a march in the city of Santiago. Over 200,000 people were marching through the streets of Santiago demanding legalization. And guess what? They got it. And the idea is to produce these medications at a decent price. This thing I said about $100, that's absolutely true. If governments were any damn good, I mean, they got all of this government land. All they have to do is set up a facility, grow the most medicinal strains, produce the extracts, and they could make them available to the public basically on a donation basis. I mean, the only reason that cannabis is so expensive is because of this black market that the government created when they illegally outlawed that plant. Yeah. If it wasn't for that, you could go to a farmer and you could buy a kilo of top quality cannabis bud for $10. This is it's beyond belief, and it's beyond belief that people put up with this nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things. Laws, right, are just they're made by government, and a lot of them are absolute, I say, for want of a better word, bullshit. They're just laws that they're making up because it's something that they want, or there's someone being paid, or whatever it is. They put a law in, even though it makes no sense and this is not right. And two, if you started, what would happen now? If you start giving out cannabis oil to everyone and curing people of cancer for $100, it will completely wreck the economy, because how many jobs have they put into this myth of chemotherapy, radiation, surgery? I mean, these are. I mean, it completely wreck the economy. So they're just trying tooth and nail to hide or keep these things suppressed because it would just take down the whole industry.
It would wreck. I mean, the big money interest. Yes, it would do them a great deal of damage. Yeah. But are we supposed to suffer and die so these people can make huge profits?
No, I'm with you. I'm just saying that this is why they fight tooth and nail to do it. Because they're, and I 100% agree. Most of the laws around this are just ridiculous, completely ridiculous, and they're always about studies. You said studies. Well, I know enough people myself, and I suppose, but the thousands of people that have taken this, and it's just been phenomenal for their health. One of the things I wanted to ask you as well, Rick, just because I know we want to sort of go in a minute, we kept you quite a long time, is I wanted to talk about for children. Is in your opinion, is it safe for children to consume?
Of course it is. It's the safest medication that anyone of any age can use. I mean, Melanie Dreher, back in the 1980s, this lady did a study to find out where the healthiest babies on this planet are born. They are born to mothers in Jamaica who use cannabis a great deal. That's the healthiest babies. Now, if the use of cannabis does not harm the baby during the developmental stages in the womb, why would this medication present a danger to a child of any age? You know, when you look at what they do to children today, this Ritalin and all this other trash they throw into children and antidepressants, you know, if you want something safe to treat your child, use cannabis extracts and stay away from these vaccinations and things like that Bill Gates is pushing. Mm-hmm. I mean, these people are all nothing but gangsters. And, you know, and the same thing when you look at Monsanto, I mean, all the genetic modification to take the good out of our food. I mean, these outfits should be burnt down. I mean, they're doing nothing but harm to the human race, and it's all about profit and control.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to vaccines, I mean, we're completely on the same page. When it comes to Monsanto, I just don't understand how they're even allowed to go on, because what they're doing to the earth and what they're doing to the soil, I mean, it's just going to end up one way, and it's not going to be good for us. I don't understand how they're even getting away with it, and in GMO food, etc. It's just a complete nightmare. So yeah, I mean, anything. I mean, this is the thing as well. I mean, I've heard you mention before. You've even treated. I mean, going back to you've even treated police who've come to you and helped, wanted your help for this. So this is a sort of double-edged sword that we're on at the moment. You've got people one hand laying down the law, saying that this stuff's illegal, and the other hand they come into you asking for help. So if I decide to give you the floor for the last bit, Rick, anything else you'd like to bring up? Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I mean, the way I see it, you know, this world the path this world we're living in is on, I think within 15, 20 years, we could wind up going extinct. You know, because you know, like I said, we're not designed to live in a poisoned environment, and we can put a stop to this. But people have to unite and with one voice tell their governments, we've had enough of your nonsense. We will no longer abide by your regulations because you have no right to control the use of this plant. And there is only one solution here. And it's not legalization, it's not decriminalization, because that comes with a whole bunch of regulations and taxation. The only thing that governments, any honorable government on this planet should do would be to repeal these laws. Throw them in a trash can where they belong, because none of them are based in reality anyway.
Yeah, 100% agree. Rick, if you just stay there for 1 second, I'm going to say, guys, that is, we kept Rick for a long time, and he's hugely passionate about it. Thank you very much for coming on, Rick. I know people, this is going to be an interview that I'm going to get lots of emails about, and people will be very keen to listen to. So thank you very much for that, Rick, and for taking your time out of your day to speak to us.
You're more than welcome, Ryan. And you know, I want to thank you, you know, because it shows like this that, you know, the people are doing, that are bringing the truth to the public, because you're sure as hell never going to find it on the mainstream media. So I look at all you folks as being heroes. You know, we're all in this battle together, and we all want to see a better world. So, you know, I thank you for allowing me to speak my mind on your show.
No, more than welcome, Rick, and I'd love to get you back on later on down the line. So, guys, that was Rick Simpson, the passionate Rick Simpson, all about cannabis oil, and what he's been through, his journey, what he's seen it heal, his whole adventure really, and we went into a lot of different areas there. I'm sure it'd be one that it's an instant classic for me. It's one you're going to probably listen back to and hopefully share with all your friends and family just about it. And when it comes out, you can do your own research into it. Don't just listen to me and Rick and our opinions on it. Have a little research into how hidden this plant is and what it can do for your health, and pass it on. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed that, and as I've said before, you can find Rick at those websites that I mentioned, phoenixtears.ca, and Rick Simpson, Ramadur.com. So have a look over there, guys. As always, any questions you've got on the episode, send me a message. Go over to www.reviveyourself.co and you can contact me there. Or if you're dealing with any chronic illness, skin, digestive issues, chronic fatigue, adrenal fatigue, whatever it may be, brain fog, like not thinking clearly, like having low energy, not having weight management problems, whatever it could be, guys. I know psoriasis, eczema, IBS, Crohn's, etc. Then we've got our free 4-day mini course as well over at www.reviveyourself.co. And as I've said, I've been promising the bundles are coming. I'll be up on my website very soon, just waiting for a few things to be in place. I know the wheels of justice turn slowly, but they are coming. So that's it for this week, guys. That's episode 33 of the Revive Yourself podcast. I'll see you next week when we'll be talking to Dax Moy all about brain set. Not mindset, but brain set and how important it is, and looking into neuroscience. So until then, have a good week, stay happy and healthy, and I'll speak to you soon.
If you're struggling with gut issues, such as gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, indigestion, heartburn, and want to finally be able to eat the foods you love without the crippling after effects, then don't forget to head over to reviveyourself.co and pick up your free copy of The Healing Health Paradigm today.